think I have enough baggage. I'm moving in.
Don't we both?
Magic happens.
I don't think people would guess that so much comes out of such a small space.
Right.
If I do say so myself.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Thanks.
And is this something that you're working on?
Actually, this is just me having all my dried stuff in one place. This is storage.
Oh, that's so
It's not
great.
an arrangement, but yeah, maybe I should make it into an arrangement. It's just so I can, if I don't see it out, then I will forget to use it. So I have to have it out. And then I have this up space where I dry a lot of my own like palms. I keep leftover products.
I brought you a little friendship bracelet. Isn't that so
Yes, it is. Oh, I can't put it on my.
It says courage.
Oh,
And
Amber.
so I was wearing courage and create, and so we're going to create courage
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna cry.
here today.
So rude of you to wait to do this in front of the camera. Oh, thank you. I love this.
Yeah. So let's create some courage.
Courage is one of the most beautiful things to me.
Isn't it?
Yes. Thank you so much.
And you can be courageous with or without fear. Like maybe you can't be courageous
Without fear. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think
I just
you
thought
can.
about that as it came out of my mouth.
It's necessary, yes.
I think so.
Because you have to, unless it's just passion, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. First, tell me about young Bethany. How did you grow up? What was it like for you as a kid? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in South Tampa, but not like that South Tampa. There is a very fancy South Tampa with Bayshore Boulevard, and I grew up kind of near the Air Force Base with my family, and was very painfully shy, very introverted, very silly. And my siblings are way older than I am. So Brian, now he just turned 47. So he's significantly older than I am. I'm 31. Meredith is 8 years older than me. So we are all separated by quite a few years. So it was kind of, young Bethany was sharing a bedroom with a 16-year-old and just getting in all of her things. My sister would get really annoyed at me. I was just very silly. I was also a really spiritual kid. I loved like preaching to all my stuffed animals because my mom taught Bible study and I would see her to do that. I also was very, very, I liked spying on the neighbors, which was just like climbing trees. And I loved painting. I loved painting and drawing. I was homeschooled for a little bit, so my mom would take me down to Picnic Island and I would take pastels out and I would paint like, draw the like black-eyed Susies that are there, or anything I saw, palm trees. I loved using pastels specifically because they could smear. Yes, that was a little bit. I was very creative.
What age, around what age was that?
I'm thinking like 7 years old is a very idyllic age in my mind, and so 7-year-old Bethany was doing all of those things. Very shy with other people, but very creative and silly at home.
So you mentioned that you were very spiritual and loved preaching. Okay, so the church that you grew up in, did they allow women to preach?
No, technically, and the joke I say to my friends is my mom she doesn't know how feminist she is. Like, she raised me to be that way because she was a teacher, but she wasn't a preacher in church. She had a Bible study for the community, but up to 300 women would attend this Bible study, and so she was kind of like a preacher of sorts, and I saw that, but it wasn't exemplified in my church. So I wonder how she's going to feel one day when she figures out she was a
preacher.
Yeah, like before her
feminist
time.
And a preacher.
Yes, and yeah, I think she'll be shocked. But not really. But I went to a classical school that was just encouraged me to do whatever. I had male teachers, even at a young age, and they all encouraged me to do what they were doing. So that was, even though I didn't receive it from church, other Christians in my life that were a little bit more intellectual, things like that, they always made me feel like I could do anything.
How did you end up teaching art?
Wow, there's a lot that happened between 7.
7 and being a teacher. Okay, we can break it down into.
Well, no, there's actually some very clear themes and steps. My mom realized and my dad realized that I really was a little artist at heart, and so when they could afford it, I would have some type of lessons in front of me. I took piano lessons, some watercolor lessons. The problem was I never was very cooperative. So I loved doing the thing, but I didn't like being told how to do the thing. And so lessons were never really much fun for me. And because I could never finish those lessons or finish those structured formats, I never really thought of myself as an artist, because I felt like that meant you had to do the thing along with the instructors. You had to be told and pass the approval of these certain gatekeepers, I guess. And so I never was willing to do that, and so I never thought I was an artist. And then I remember in high school, a mentor, he was a headmaster at my school at the time. It was the first person to kind of tell me, you are one, and it shows in every area of your life, not just visual art, and you really need to focus on this. It saved my life, and then I started studying art because I still didn't really believe I was an artist. So I thought the safe way to not risk anything is to study it from afar. If people know how much I care about it, they'll want to, they'll hold me especially to a high standard. So especially if they find out I've been doing it since I was little, they expect you to be at a certain standard by now. I don't want to tell anyone I'm actually making any. I'll just study it and become an expert in that way. And so when I went to college, I studied art, but I was still too scared of it. So I studied philosophy of art. And a lot of ways that is kind of the only way I like looking at art, is how it influences people. I'm not really interested in art for art's sake as much as I'm interested in artists and their way of thinking and how they shape the world. And that's still kind of how I approach it. I studied why art mattered and why beauty mattered, and I started thinking less about art and more about beauty in a very large sense. So I was kind of slowly appreciating art more, but leaving it. And then it wasn't till I went through some really abusive relationships, was really depressed, till I actually started making it seriously, then felt like, okay, now I could actually teach this, because I don't just know about it, I could show them, and I do still have a skill set. I'm going to start honing it. I want to get better. Maybe I'll teach and make it on my own. But the suffering and pain kind of is a thing that pushed me there, and my art shows that. And so again, I always wanted the art to be attached to people, and I think that's why teaching art, more than being an artist, I still wanted to teach in some capacity. Even as a florist, and my favorite part is talking to the person about what type of thing I am going to make with them. The consultation is what's really fun for me. And getting into the community and doing florist things in the community is what's really makes my heart pitter patter.
Yes.
So that's a long way to say. I think the only thing that has connected me to art for so long is really my love of people and how it touches their hearts, how it moves people. And I think that's how I started teaching. And even when I taught, most of our class, they would be doing their task and practicing, but it was about the conversations we had during their practicing. And I know you know.
Oh my gosh,
that
yes.
was the point.
I'm like jumping out of my skin, and I don't want to interrupt you, but I'm like, yes, all of that.
The mentorship was the point. Whether that some children could not see proportion, they'll never be able to see proportion their whole lives, but that wasn't the point. The point was the peace they felt when they were just making that motion, and they felt safe and could just kind of meditate in that.
Obviously, we had some considerable interactions, you know, working at the same place for a couple years, but I didn't really know you, and didn't realize how much alike we are. What you just described all about your art is exactly my thing, and you know, never considering myself to be an artist,
right?
Even though I had been doing what I do for years, you know, it's taking so long to like come to that conclusion that maybe I am an artist, and I still say the maybe part. And then the whole thing, the thing that I love the most is teaching and people's stories. And you know, I can perform, I know how to perform, but that's not where that's not where my passion lies. In the performance, like you said, art for art's sake, you know, art's sake, just you know, I don't get a lot of joy out of performing,
right?
But the producing a performance and the, you know, the story and everything that goes along in the building of that is where I get my kicks.
Yes. I think that's why I could never.
I am super curious to know what was going on in your life round about December 2017 when you posted the album cover of Patty Griffin. Let Him Fly. Well, that was let me get my right. Living with Ghosts. Sorry.
Oh yeah.
Living with Ghosts is the title of the album.
Yes, Let Him Fly is on that album.
Yes, I wrote that down because that's one of my favorites.
Yes.
So Patty Griffin is one of my all-time favorites.
No way, me too.
That's
my
why
gosh.
when I saw that, I was like, wow, we are so much alike. I never realized how much alike we
funny. Oh, she's she's one of my all-time favorites. Yeah.
So, and then shortly after that, I'll just add a few more things, and then you can give like a comprehensive answer. So shortly after that, in January of 2018, you posted Julian Baker.
Oh yeah.
And then right after that, so Julian Baker, I was not familiar with. I had to look that up.
Yes.
And listen to some of that. And I feel like that's kind of in the vein of Patty Griffin. Like, you know, I mean,
they talk about their suffering openly.
Yes.
Yeah.
And very lyrical.
Yes.
Very, you know.
Yes.
And that's, I don't listen to songs per se. I don't listen to music. I listen to songs for the lyrics and I'll listen to pretty much any kind of music as long as there's something in the lyrics for me, you know. So you posted Patty Griffin and then Julian Baker and then Tupac. Yeah,
that sounds right. All of those sound right.
So I'm wondering.
That's so funny.
Maybe
explain. Yeah.
I mean, if there is anything.
Oh yeah, very clearly. Especially all of those musicians are very close to my heart. Tupac's a little. I keep him with boundaries, but they're all very close to my heart. Patty Griffin, I fell in love with when I was a teenager, and I taught myself to play guitar, and I've written probably 100 songs because of Patty Griffin.
Oh wow.
And yeah, so she's like my roots, and she's like represents a very core core part of who I am and a lot of my sentiment. She was very melodic, or she is very melodic, but her songs that I was exposed to then were very melodic, but also dealt very directly with sadness, and I can listen to her in any stage of life. But I definitely felt a home in her because she had like a tension between this beautiful, lyrical, melodic song and this deep sense of pain. So I really love her. And then Julian Baker, what year that is? So I'm trying to think what that is.
I did in 2018.
2018. Okay, so I was probably figuring out I was gay. And Julian Baker was she was becoming a poster child of being gay and Christian. And so because she, at the time, I don't think she's ever been evangelical, but she was saying, yeah, I'm gay and Christian. What? Ask me about it. I dare you. And she's still she's not as open about it, but she still, if you ask her, will say that. And so I felt another side of myself, like, oh my gosh, gay and Christian. Her music made me feel like it was okay. She was the only person I knew anywhere in culture that was claiming to be both. And actually her music was, when I first heard it, years before, was really upsetting to me. I thought it was so dark. And I was like, oh, I cannot listen to this. This is so depressing. And then just one album of hers felt so it was a dark time too, but it just resonated with me, and I think I was just drawn to her as a person, her existence. Mm-hmm. And she's also very lyrical, also talks about pain, also with beautiful melodies. Just the poetry of pain is what both of those things have in common.
Yes.
And also there's another dynamic, right? Like there's now the gay dynamic. They're sad and soulful, but now there's like the gay dynamic. And so that was a new dynamic for me. And then Tupac was also me just probably playing devil's advocate. I just want to see people's reaction when I say I don't endorse all aspects of Tupac, right? But 'cause he did some problematic things. However, I loved that he wrote poetry and his tension of being between street culture and like pop culture. Mm-hmm. He was like in Hollywood, but also caught up in these really dangerous street battles. Mm-hmm. And I just loved how just that tension I always respect. And I was feeling like I always have felt like I'm in between worlds all the time. Mm-hmm. So I just really, and he would write about it. He also, I tend to be a people pleaser. So whenever I'm blasting Tupac, the people pleaser part has been shut down, has reached a maximum. Mm-hmm. And I'm about to stand up for all my needs. And I'm about to kind of tell you what I'm going to do and what I'm not going to do. And so it's also, for me, it was kind of a preaching confidence to myself a little bit. Confidence even if you're in between two worlds. So, probably some anger too. Sadness tends to lead to anger when you don't deal with it. So I do see the progression of this is where I feel comfortable. This is a new aspect. Now to adopt it, I'm going to have to say F you to a lot of things. It was just like when you said that, I'm like, yep, I know exactly what was happening actually.
That tracks.
Yeah. Oh, music. My dad, he can trace his history through cars and music. Anybody probably can trace their whole psychological well-being through their life through the music they were listening to. Yeah. Well, I came out to my family about a month into dating my now partner. Because I knew I was never going to hide somebody. I'm just a very open person. Secrecy isn't my style. Lying isn't my style. It also assumes some type of wrong in what you're doing, which there wasn't any. Mm-hmm. So as soon as I knew G was going to stay around, I immediately went to my mom and my dad and sat them down and said, I'm dating a woman. And there was crying involved. But love involved, and they were both handled it really well. And then it wasn't till, I don't remember, probably March of last year, maybe it was June, I don't remember. Last year is when it came out in a larger way on my personal social media. So friends and families I grew up with, I shared that, and I got a really positive response, even from my conservative Christian friends. Only one person responded pretty dramatically, but have since apologized. Yeah, it was really beautiful. I had the idyllic experience. Coming out? Yes. And I feel like when people are talking about their coming out stories, I know when to speak and not speak, because that is not the normal experience, especially with the traditional Christian family I have. I was old enough to know who I was. I was old enough to have formed my own spiritual journey and identity. I lived a city over. I had 31 years of life behind me where people knew who I was and my character and trusted me. A lot of teenagers don't have that when they come out, you know. Right. So it was actually a very easy experience. Mm-hmm. The joke between G and I, my partner and I, is that I haven't lost a lot of my straight privilege yet. Because I don't appear, I guess, super butch or anything. It was just wonderful. I'm so blessed. And so I came, and then when I did that, I also was I also did it because I knew I was forming a business, a floral business, and I wanted that to be a huge part of my business. Mm-hmm. And I never wanted any clientele to ever feel like they had to guess whether they could come to me or not for my services. And so I knew I had to do it personally, because I wanted, if I was going to have a space in the community, I wanted it to be for those people. So it was really necessary I came out personally so I could feel completely free that way.
And authentic.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you get into florals?
Okay. I was burnt out at the school where I was teaching. And I think it was also a symbol of being theologically burnt out from certain theological perspectives I was holding. And I think I had finally run out of steam trying to do something other than what is just creative for creativity's sake. I think I was reared to be very academic, and so I harnessed all my creative energy and put it into an academic sphere. And then I think I had reached a point where that just wasn't enough. I wanted to actually make something. So I was just going to do a lot of the fine art I had been doing and start selling it. And then at the time, somebody said, why don't you try being a florist? That sounds really relaxing and fun, and you could just refresh. And I thought, I forget that people are florists. That's a job people do. You just forget about certain things. You're like, oh yeah, there's those people. And I kind of laughed it off. And then as a joke, I was camping with my family, and I made a dried bouquet out of things that were around the campsite, trying to make the point that nothing grows in Florida sand and that everything's dead and brown. And then she said, that actually doesn't look that bad. And then I really started thinking about it. I had already put in my notice at the school where I was teaching. It was a really tense environment there. I had to get out, and I thought, what the heck? I'm just gonna try. And I went to Edith's Flowers. I remember not knowing a dang thing. I was like, I like flowers, and you have flowers here. And there's real skill, actually, that is required. And now I feel like it's so offensive, probably Anyways, I went in there, and they were very kind and generous and said, okay, well, go in the cooler, pick anything you want. Here's a vessel, and we'll see what you got. And I was like, oh no, I thought you were going to show me what to do. And so I went, and that was a clear no. They rejected me because I couldn't do anything. And then I just happened to have a friend in Tampa who knew a girl who worked at the florist. And I called them up, came in for an interview. The person interviewing me ended up being a family friend, and I got the job. And I worked there for 3 years. It was very hard because I had this artistic arrogance that because I was a creative, I would know how to do this. And they look so fragile and beautiful that you just think it'd be easy. And it was refreshing, because making something or wrestling with materials is really rewarding work.
Yes.
But and I could relax my mind. I could think about something else. But at the same time, it was really challenging in a way that I was not used to. I was used to being praised for my mind and praised in these other ways, and that didn't matter in florals. And so it was a huge. It was a huge challenge for my ego too. It was a big time of humility. I just grew in so much humility because I identified so much with this intellectual persona and just being known as smart and together. And then saying I'm a florist, nobody instantly thinks you must be really intelligent. And so that's how I started. I needed something to just refresh me and rejuvenate me, that I didn't have to think so hard. I was in charge. I'd been in charge in every job I've ever had. I was always the administrator, the leader, and I just had to sit there, take the order for the floral arrangement and just make it. And it was super healing. It was super healing. And I was very good at it after time. It was just a confidence thing. And then I realized, oh my gosh, I can just apply what I apply with painting. Like, this is just a sculpture. Oh, I just apply the same things you do with sculpture. And then it kind of all unraveled itself. And then I thought, I will be a better florist because I'm thinking of sculpture. And then I got really, really like a lot of ambition, like flooded really, really quickly. And I started apprenticing in Jacksonville because I learned that events is where you could do big sculptures. You could do really big pieces of work. And I loved having to do it in a timeline. We had an hour to make a huge piece and it had to be gorgeous. That sounded like so much fun to me. The adrenaline rush of trying to, and also like the ego boost of I did that, and like that amount of time I loved. I became addicted to it. So that's why I really tell people I'm an event florist. I can't stay in a shop all day and just make tiny things anymore. I just really want to make big, and I want to be there for huge moments. I want to make this piece match your moment.
Tell me how you identify with the theme of recovery.
This is what I didn't think of when I gave you my first response, was that there was a time where I was coming out of an abusive relationship and I was just heartbroken and psychologically broken. And that's when a lot of my gold leaf black and white painting came, and it really helped me process. And that is it was a huge way I was recovering, and it was shocking to me that I would even forget about that. I had a friend who met with me every week in a Starbucks, and I still didn't think I was an artist, but she is a successful illustrator, and I would just draw really things that I was afraid to draw before, like people in the nude, women, a lot of Mary Magdalene figures, just long hair, naked, mourning. That was super important for me to get my grief out and to me to see on paper what I was feeling, because I had a tendency to just kind of push it down, or felt like I could just not, I should not focus on it. So that first season of my creativity was extremely vital for my healing through those situations. But then I felt like I was kind of okay until I was teaching, and I had gone through another heartbreak. I also was wrestling with theological implications of being gay, realizations that my faith community could have gotten very important things so wrong, a lot of big questions, and it was causing me to spiral deeper into, I knew I had clinical depression just from family history, but it was getting so bad that I didn't, I would be genuinely enjoying the kids, and they would walk out of the room and I would just start crying for no reason. And they would come in and I would be embarrassed because I couldn't identify why really. And so that went on for a while, before I kind of I would get up every morning for like a week at 5 a.m. to get ready for school and all these different things, and then go to Peace River when they opened at 7 and wait there just hoping they had a cancellation so I can go get an appointment. And it was really extreme. And it didn't really go away until I started working with flowers. And it's so strange to think of the correlation between them. I think working with nature in general will always teach you lessons about what you can and cannot control. I think exploring sexuality and gender issues, being in nature is super helpful and healing, because you see all the variety. You see how the variety is necessary and how it makes the world a better place. And that was helped me process these other questions. Also, there's this really interesting, tender tension that happens with florals, which is you have to force it to do something, but in the most gentle way, because it is fragile. And all of these like tiny physical lessons I had to learn with this material was also allowing me to process heart issues and mind issues that were similar, like when to push, when to not, when to let go of things, when to not. Do you force things or not? Like, could there be more than what I know right here? If you go to Australia, the floral world looks entirely different. Just all these kind of visual, metaphors of these truths I was processing. And it was very, really meditative for me for all of those reasons. And it felt like my joy was kind of slowly coming back. Nothing was being asked of me but to just see the best in this material and work with it. Just being around flowers, just being around things that are beautiful was so healing. And then I realized, gosh, just being around beauty itself, I don't even have to touch it. Just being around flowers all day just makes you happier. It sounds so simple.
Yes.
But it really was, and you're constantly surprised by things and learning and challenged. And I didn't have any responsibility. And I think I always put a lot of responsibility on myself as far as caring for certain intellectual opinions, things like that. Nobody cared who I was. I was just the florist in the back. Yeah, but the material itself taught me a lot of truth. Just the way you work with nature, it taught me a lot of truth and helped me process. Whenever I talk about sexuality or gender coming out, working with flowers in the floral world was a huge part of me understanding the diversity of people.
When I am really, when I feel heavy, when I feel, trodden, I get out on my bike and the wind and the fresh air and the...
I feel like it's a universal thing. Maybe I'm just like projecting. I was in a small like Christian queer female group over the summer, and they were all, it was about coming out, and they all said what helped them was going on walks, going outside. Without a doubt, like without an exception, all of us said going outside and taking walks is what helps us feel centered, it helps us feel peaceful, it helps us get perspective, because you just see things, and nature tells so much truth. Mm-hmm. And it's truth that we kind of know, we just forget.
Yes.
Yes, and that's how flowers especially, because I felt like I was dealing with myself because they were so fragile and tender, but had to like do so much. Yes, it tells so much truth.
So I don't think that any of us are ever recovered completely from our trauma, but what does recovery look like for you today?
Joy. I just feel joyful, and in my work, what I'm doing doesn't feel like work because I am enjoying it. So also intimacy, I can be fully myself. I don't feel like I have to hide any part of myself. I think a lot of it is all of the things that used to weigh me down, which were concerned for how I was perceived in my community, whether I was coming to the right conclusions or the most admirable conclusions, what I've done through creativity has kind of put all those fears to rest. I no longer kind of see things in such a polarized way. That's brought a lot of peace. I feel very confident, which is huge. Becoming a business owner as somebody who used to hide behind their mom's skirt is just like... the teachers would try to draw me out all the time thinking I could do more, and I just didn't have the confidence, I didn't have the energy because I was depressed. So the first time in my life I have the energy and the love and the will, and I can be wholly present, I can focus on people, I can be creatively in control. Yeah, I think it's just finding joy and really pursuing what I want, which I never did. Yeah. Florals has been the first time in my life I pursued unabashedly, unapologetically what I wanted to see in the world. I thought I just made that shirt, art as activism, because and my tagline for it is, if you want to see it, make it. And so I feel like this has been so healing because I'm making it, but not just for my own pain this time. Like, oftentimes for weddings, it's like a very joyful time, and now for other people, it's not just about myself, and that's way more satisfying for me personally to see it connect with other people. But yeah, I think just all those really deep, hard, big questions, it's so funny. I just think they were solved through flowers and beauty.
I love it.
Because there's room for mystery. You're so humbled by nature and you're so silenced by beauty that it just puts things in perspective. And I'm not up at night and I don't feel a concern for things to be right. Yeah. Art is not about being right. It's about things being beautiful.
I love it. Love it. All right. Well, let's I want to take a look at some of your artwork. So let's do that.
Okay.
Yay.
All my space. This is like where I keep my fine art stuff. It's not dead. It's here. It's here and here, just to kind of remind me when I want to. And a dry eraser, complaining.
Right.
But like all my paint brushes, I still use the spray paint often. And I pulled this workout for you to kind of show you. This was like before I found florals. Like a lot of the fine art I was doing was focused on just like moody women. This is like a really good example of me working through feelings. It's pretty emo. It's pretty like, it's kind of sad girl. Just it definitely showed a lot of my depression. But I needed a place where I could feel free to do that. I was trying not to be emo in all of my artwork, and it was the first time I kind of let myself do that. But the gold was really redemptive. I used like the gold in all of the pieces. And actually, I remember I used this as my sign at the punk flea market, and somebody came by and asked to buy it. And this was a print, but I remember thinking, that's my sign, you can't buy it. And she's like, okay, I'll wait till it's done. We did like traditional style art in my classroom when we taught the high schoolers, and I had my friend Amanda come and give us like a tutorial on some still life, because I realized I was only teaching them bodies and only teaching them street art and like things that were not traditional practice. And so she came, and this was my version, and I really enjoyed it. I was really proud of it, and felt because I never do anything like still life. I always do things from emotional, symbolic place, and so I was proud of it. And it's only one of the only things that's colorful that I've ever made. I was actually going to make a dried installation, which is one of my favorite things to make, and we have tons of really fun ingredients.
I'm going to step aside while you create the magic.
Let's see. like start with things that are really like fill up the most space. That way they can kind of create a tension or thickness to pop things into. That's another thing I find very like satisfying about my job. I am so good at making messes, and I love it.
You love it?
I like enjoy it, and it's part of the process. And I just, as long as you clean them up, you're allowed to be super messy, and I just love messes. And it's beautiful messes. Like, oh, sorry, my flower petals are
Right, it's supposed to be like this.
Good. Thank you. Or maybe that was the last screen. There. Now we're done.
Oh my goodness.
Thank you for your moral support, pompous contributions.
Right.
And
did nothing.
Trustworthy discernment. Thanks for telling me.
There we go.
Yes.
I think that's what I contributed the most.